Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over the Øresund once again to Copenhagen in Denmark, and we're revisiting one of my favourite Scandinavian breweries, although this is the first review I'm doing from them in this particular kind of sub-style, I guess you could say. So for this one we are going to do another beer from Amager Bryghus in Copenhagen. This of course is one of the ones that was released on the recent Små Partiers here in Sweden, and we're going to have a taste of the Black Nordic Skies. This is an imperial stout, or imperial coffee stout I should say, sorry, coming in at 10% ABV, and it's a collaboration, one of their numerous American collaborations with Modern Times Beer, originally from San Diego over in California. Now this is a style of beer that I've been getting really into recently. Dugas Brewery here over in Sweden have been doing some really awesome imperial coffee stouts, so I'm really curious to see how one of my other favourite Scandinavian breweries do with this style. So really looking forward to this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. I've had some very positive experiences from both breweries that are involved in this one, so I think this one will be a really interesting review. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Amager Bryghus before, and my other reviews that I've done from Modern Times Beer before as well. No doubt I will add more to both in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you, and one for all the American beers. This beer will of course appear in both of those lists because it's half and half. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, and we'll start off with Amager Bryghus, since these guys are the home brewery if you like. So Amager Bryghus are based in Kastrup in Copenhagen in Denmark, the southern part of the city, and these guys are probably one of the best known Danish craft breweries outside of the likes of Toil and Mikkeller of course. But this brewery was established back in April of 2007 by two friends, Morten Valentin Lundsbach and Jakob Storm, both of whom had been avid homebrewers for a number of years. But apparently in school the pair had been forced to do a chemistry and physics project together, so they wrote about the fermentation process in beers, and this really got them hooked on the idea of homebrewing, and then eventually of course this has led to being professional brewers. Both gained their brewing diplomas from the Scandinavian Brewing School in 2008, and the company has since gone on to become very highly decorated. As I say, one of the best known craft breweries over in Denmark, and I think one of the bigger volume producers actually in terms of microbreweries over there these days. But their first brewery was located in Tornby in the southern part of Copenhagen, and they've been constantly expanding over the last few years. They've recently moved to a new site that's closer to the airport, which has a much larger capacity, and they've also just opened up their tap house bar in Copenhagen as well, and that's somewhere that I do hope to get over and visit within the next couple of weeks. That'll be a really awesome visit over to Copenhagen, so very much looking forward to that one. But yeah, as I say, one of the very recognisable names in Danish craft beer these days, and Copenhagen, as I've told you many a time, is a little bit of a beer mecca these days. It's probably one of the best craft beer cities in the world actually, I would say, and these guys have been around since since near the start of it actually, I would say. So yeah, very good Danish craft brew, and if you haven't tried their beers, I really recommend that you try them out. If you try the IPAs, I think you're really going to enjoy them, and if you try the things at the darker end of the spectrum like this, I'm sure you'll enjoy these things too. Probably my favourite beers from these guys, probably Winter in Bangalore is one that I really enjoy, the Batch 1000 IPA, and also the Herr Fredriksson is a little bit of a Danish classic if you like. But that's all you really need to know about Amager Bryghus just now. If you want to learn a little bit more, check out the brewery website in the description below, and you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and things like that, and keep up to date with all the latest goings on. They're constantly putting out new beers and stuff like this, so I'm sure I'll return to these guys again in the fairly near future. So anyway, on to the American half of the brewery then. So Modern Times Beer. So Modern Times Beer are based in the Point Loma district of San Diego in California, and this brewery was founded back in 2013 by Jacob McKean, who was a geek home brewer, beer geek home brewer, and a former Stone Brewing employee. But they brewed their first batch of beer on the 18th of May 2013, and they had their first beers on tap in their tasting room on the 9th of August before the grand grand opening on the 1st of September. But this brewery originally started to operate a small 30 BBL system, and today though their beers are quite widely distributed throughout Southern California and of course to other places in the world, including here in Sweden. You know, the Modern Times beers do quite regularly make it over here to Sweden in the cans. But the brewery itself is named after the Utopian community, which was founded in 1850, and most of their beers are named after utopian ideas or mythological utopias. So apparently the Modern Times beer colony people started with living with bartering and stuff like this without the restriction of marriage, and they experimented with a less kind of exploitative and pleasurable world apparently. And today the Modern Times colony is Brentwood on Long Island in New York State. That's where you would find it today. But Jacob has always been very keen on these little pockets of history, and so he decided that he wanted to name his brewery after one of them. Today, of course, though, this brewery has expanded a hell of a lot since it was founded. They've got 2 tap rooms in San Diego as well as the original brewery. They've got a brewery and restaurant in Los Angeles and California as well, one in Escondidas as well, or Encinitas if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and they've also got another brewery restaurant up in Portland in Oregon too, and they do have another one in the works from what I gather as well. So interesting things to come from these guys in the future. And they've also been roasting their own coffee beans as well, which I'm guessing is the reason behind them producing a coffee stout as their collaboration brew with Amager Bryghus as well. If you go on their brewery website, you can buy all these different kind of coffee beans and things like that from them, which seems to be very, very cool. And they're also a completely employee-owned brewery as well, which is another very, very interesting step for them too. So yeah, one of the more, you know, these guys, their presence in Europe I think has increased quite a little bit over the last few years. I've seen Modern Times beers making it into Scotland as well on some of the Facebook pages that I keep an eye on at home. I've seen them over in Copenhagen too. And of course we get them here in Sweden fairly regularly. I think I saw them up in Norway when I was there recently as well. So yeah, you know, they are a growing presence over here in Europe, and you do get the Modern Times beers in Japan as well. I have seen them at Koji's store in Osaka in Japan as well. So yeah, a really kind of up and coming, I guess, or well, they are well established, but still quite an up and coming Californian brewery, these guys. So 2 very, very good breweries involved in this one. Most of the beers that I've had from Modern Times before have been IPAs and stuff like this, and I think that's what they're particularly known for. So it is cool to see these guys doing something at the darker end of the spectrum as well. As I always say, if you want a good measure of a craft brewery, try one of their IPAs and try one of their Imperial Stouts, and then you can really see what a brewery can actually do. But that's all you really need to know about Modern Times beer. Again, these guys are a fairly prolific brewery, so if you follow them on Facebook and Facebook, Twitter, and I guess Instagram as well, that will keep you up to date with all the latest goings on there. But that's all you need to know about both breweries. Like I said, both websites and stuff are in the description for you below. Let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself. So as I always do with these Amager beers, I'll read out the little blurb if you like, because I always enjoy these. So the Lone Horseman is a ghostly phantom found in tales throughout the Nordic countries. According to legend, he will appear only on the darkest of nights, and only when the polar lights ignite the skies. A knight in shining armour on a majestic bright white horse, it is said, but no one really knows, because no one has lived to tell. At Amager, you risk meeting the Lone Horseman on the desolate and windswept Calvabud Commons. If for some god-forsaken reason you should wander this wilderness area on a deep, dark night. If you do, you will most likely be hopelessly lost, because even the bright lights of nearby Copenhagen will be dimmed out to black there. And if you then hear the distant snorting of a horse and hooves slowly approaching, you may soon spy a gentle, gallant and soft-spoken knight who will offer you a ride out of the darkness and back into civilization. As tempting as it may seem to accept his kind offer, you must now instead flee. Flee as fast as you can, but it will most likely already be too late, as that kind and mesmerising voice will lure you in. But no one who actually climbed the lone horseman's horse and under that black Nordic sky has ever been seen again alive. Who is he? Nobody knows, but that he's still out there, everybody knows. This is a collaboration beer made with Modern Times Beer, California, USA. So yeah, as you know, Amager, they always come up with these really random little stories to put on their beers, and they've always got some really very nice but also very distinctive artwork on the beers too. One thing I do wish they would re-add to their bottles though is the flags. They always used, if it was a collaboration beer, they always used to have the Danish flag for Amager and then the flag of the other, the nation of the other brewery as well. But one thing they always do that's very cool is they tell you the specs of the beer. So like I said to you at the start of the video, this one is a 10% Imperial Coffee Stout. It's The malt base in this one is Pilsner Pale, Munich Chocolate, Low Chocolate and Special B. Also some wheat malt in there as well. They've added coffee beans to it, and the hops in this particular beer are Columbus and Citra, and it uses a UK ale yeast strain, this one. So yeah, it should be a very, very nice beer. There you can see the Modern Times brewery symbol on this one, and here of course is the standard Amager Bryghus bottle cap on the beer, and there is their symbol too. But as I say, lovely artwork in this one, and I always enjoy the artwork that these guys put on their beers. It's only quite recently, of course, that they've changed to doing 330 bottles rather than half litres, and I think it brings the cost of the beer down a little bit, and it also means that they can actually export a little bit more from the different batches too. So yeah, without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting. So yeah, you can smell some of that lovely coffee just as soon as you open up the bottle of this beer. I have to admit, I do miss having these big half-litre bottles from Amager Bryghus, but you know, that's probably just because I'm Scottish and you know, we are genetically alcoholic. But I'm sure you can say the same about the Scandinavians to some degree as well, considering all that Viking heritage and stuff. But as you can see with this beer, it's poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour, as you would expect from an imperial stout. There's a solid half finger of a frothy, I would say very, very dark tan head on that one. It's very quickly faded to be a very thin foamy layer. If I hold this beer up to the light, there is a tiny, tiny little bit of a very, very dark chestnut edge to it, almost like a kind of Coca-Cola colour, if you like. But yeah, it's faded away to be a very, very thin foamy layer on top of this beer, and it is pretty much pitch black, as you would expect from the imperial stout style. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, overall it looks very, very nice. Nothing overall particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider it's an imperial stout and an imperial coffee stout at that. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this beer and just see how we get on then. Oh, straight away, that coffee just comes out at you very, very nicely. So it's one thing I've always said about these imperial coffee stouts: the coffee beans can add just a ridiculous level of complexity to the beer. Straight away, the coffee beans jump out at this one into the nose, and it's a really well roasted coffee. It's got a good earthy presence to it actually, and it's almost like a well-fired earthy presence, if you like. There's a little touch of a slightly floral aromatic quality to the tea in this one, but I would say it's mainly a kind of earthy, kind of well-roasted coffee bean that's in this one, which is very, very nice. I'm not a coffee drinker at all, incidentally. I never ever drink the stuff pretty much, and you know, if I did actually drink coffee, it would probably send me to the roof just because I'm not used to it. But with these, you know, big imperial stouts, you can really, really tell how much how big an influence coffee beans can actually have on the complexities in these big imperial stouts. But yeah, it's a lovely, to me it smells like the espresso machines you'll get in like Espresso House over here, or Starbucks to you guys over in America, Costa Coffee to people in Scotland. You know, it really has that almost just coffeeria, can you say that, cafeteria? I don't even know, like a coffee roastery smell to it, this one. But to me, the coffee bean in this beer it does have a little bit of an aromaticity, floral kind of quality to it, but it's mainly quite an earthy coffee, and quite a well-fired, roasted one at that. Of course, you can detect a lot of elements of the imperial stout under this one. Some of the nice roasty black malts in there. You can pick up a nice bit of that chocolate quality as well. This one's got two different types of chocolate malts, of course, and I would say that chocolate quality, it's quite a high cocoa element in the coffee bean in this one. It's a nice sort of 80%-ish cocoa, I would say. And of course that's when you start to get, it's one of these ones where there's a very strong but smooth chocolatey presence to it, but you start to get some of the red fruity esters. The thing that's interesting me about this beer as well, I picked up a little bit when I was smelling it, there is almost a little touch of that kind of medicinal quality to this beer. And you know, obviously caffeine is medicinal to coffee addicts and stuff like that. Alcohol is medicinal to the Celts and the Scandinavians, I'm sure, as well. But yeah, it really does. This beer has that lovely, it has a lovely little touch of that kind of almost phenolic quality to it. You really can smell that. It's got just a little edge of a kind of cakey sort of thing going on in it. I want to say there's a little touch of brown sugar to this one, a kind of like a sort of well-fired caramel almost, quite a syrupy and molasses kind of brown sugar type quality to this beer. But yeah, it does have a very nice kind of solid presence to it, this beer. The malt base is really where all the complexity in this one is, but that's exactly what you'd expect when this beer is of course an imperial stout. A little bit of an earthy quality to this one as well. It's got a little touch of a grassy and floral note, which will be from the Columbus. Of course, Columbus is quite a prominent, a well-known bittering hop, I guess you could say. And you've got some nice red, juicy, fruity notes in this one. As I say, it's got a little bit of that almost kind of phenolic, red, fruity, medicinal quality to it. It's almost a little bit like a kind of datey alcohol cake or something like that. You've got a little touch of a slightly sharper raisiny note in this one, and some kind of figs and sort of candied strawberries and stuff like that too. The aroma of this beer, as I say, is very, very nice. In terms of the Imperial Coffee Stout, like I say, this one really leans a little bit more towards the roasty, toasty, earthy side of things. But that said, it does have a really, really nice smoothness to it. But we spent quite a little bit of time looking at the aroma in this beer, and to be fair, that's one of the things I always do when it comes to coffee stouts, because they do have a very good level of complexity to it. But without further ado then, let's actually have a taste of this beer. This one is the Black Nordic Skies from Amager Bryghus in Kastrup in Copenhagen, and Modern Times beer originally from San Diego over in California. Let's get stuck into this beer. Slàinte, skål. Ooh, that one is really nice actually. I like what they've done with this. If I compare this just to the Dugas Imperial Stouts, because those are the ones of course that I've had most contact with recently, this particular beer, as I said in the malt base, it's got Pilsner malt and stuff like that in it. It's really interesting because on one side of the coin, the body is actually very, very light and less oily compared to the other ones that I've had before. But it still has, you know, a shitload of flavour into it, to put it bluntly. It's really interesting that. That's my first impression of this beer. Very light in the body for the style, but you know, it actually has, it really just is very light in the mouthfeel compared to some of the other ones I've had. But I will say straight away, this is another damn good beer from these guys, and to be fair, I'm not surprised. You know, Amager Bryghus, very capable of producing an imperial stout. The Herr Fredriksson, as I said, one of my personal favourites. Modern Times beer, you know, I've heard some really good things about their stouts as well. I think this is the first stout that I'm trying that involves these guys, but I'll say straight away, this is a really, really nice beer. If you get the chance to try this, have a go at it. This one was of course released in the recent Små Partiers from Systembolaget here in Sweden. Yeah, that's just a beautiful beer, to be quite frank with you. I mean, it's very, very highly rated on Untappd and Rate Beer from what I remember. I did have a little quick look at it, and you can see why with this one immediately. But let's try and break this flavour down a little bit. So with this beer, you can really feel a little bit of that roasty black malt. That just kind of forms the whole linchpin, the back of the beer. The coffee beans are coming out of this one very, very interestingly as well. You can feel the smoothness of these coffee beans just sitting there on top of that roasty black malt character. In the very centre of your palate, you can pick up that there's a little touch of a brown sugary note to this one. It's quite a syrupy brown sugar, but at the same time it does retain a little bit of sweetness. And if you just go outside of that a little bit, a lot of these nice, very high cocoa chocolatey flavours are kind of coming out of this beer, but the way that the smoothness in the coffee comes out in this one is very, very nice. And like I was picking up in the aroma, it's a very kind of the coffee kind of notes that come out of this one are really very, very smooth and leaning towards the earthy side of things. They've pulled off this beer really, really quite beautifully actually. And as I say, the thing that really surprises me about this one is how kind of light in the mouthfeel it is compared to some of the other ones that I've had within this style. But yeah, this is a really, really nice one, and I have to say, could this potentially be one of my favourite beers that I've had from Amager Bryghus? I think so. Would it pass Herr Fredriksson? I don't know, but it's certainly running it quite close, I have to say. That's how good I think this beer is. It's definitely for me up there with the likes of Herr Fredriksson. But like I say, this is a style I've been getting very, very into recently. But yeah, the further you go into the aftertaste of this one, that coffee, the coffee notes in this one, those nice earthy, roasty coffee notes, they just smooth out a lot, and you start to get more of the chocolatey sweetness to this one later into the flavour, I would say. And that coffee, the coffee notes in this one really just smooth out the roasty black malt backbone that this beer has. The thing that I was saying at the start, this beer came across as being very, very light, but the more and more you actually take into this one, I think the more it really starts to smooth out, and then you start to get more and more of these kind of oily flavours out of it. But as I say, another beautiful beer from Amager Bryghus, who I know produce some really good imperial stouts, and I've tried some of the IPAs and stuff from Modern Times. I do know how capable a brewery they are, so you know, obviously when these guys come together, they are going to produce something that's pretty damn good, I think. But yeah, this is a really, really nice beer. I would say it is kind of up there. It's not too far away from the Dugas beers. Actually, as I say, Dugas Brewery for me are one of the best imperial coffee stout producers, or coffee stout producers, and this one really is pretty damn good as well. And I guess Modern Times must be doing some very, very interesting stuff with their coffees over there as well. So I'd be really interested to try some of their different coffee stouts at some point. It's something I definitely need to look a little bit more into. But I really like how all of the flavours in this beer are going together. For me, let's have a look at the hops of this one. The hops are pretty simple, I would say. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there. That'll be from the Columbus, but it smooths out a little bit. You do get a tiny little bit of herbal quality in the hops in this one, but as you come further forward towards the front of the tongue, that earthiness does kind of sit there a little bit, but you get a nice little touch of a floral aromaticity. Then round the very front curve of the palate, the beer is just a little bit lighter and grassy, and then behind that front curve of the tongue, that's where you get that nice oily bubble out of this one, where those juicy, fruity esters start to come out of the beer. And yeah, this one to me has a very, very nice red fruity quality to it. It's interesting, as I say, I think this might be the first. I could be wrong right enough, because Dugas Brewery never tell you exactly what they put in their beers, but this one, as far as I'm aware, is the first imperial stout that I've had Citra in, and it adds a really interesting element to the beer. Actually, I would say you've got some of those lovely juicy red fruity esters coming out of this beer. You know, you've got the typical sort of figgy. This beer actually does lean a little bit more towards the figgy side of things. There's a little bit of a sharper raisiny quality for me in this one, but it does start to push more into the kind of figgy and sort of slightly almost datey notes the further you go into the flavour of this beer. It's almost got a little bit of a kind of sultana type quality to it as well, but there's a little bit of a sort of candied red fruit ester in the front curve of the tongue too, which is really nice. I like how everything kind of goes together in this beer too. The way the flavours all blend together in this one is very, very nice. This is one of these beers I think that's not too punchy in any one regard. It's all about how these flavours blend together, but it does it really, really damn well, and I'm not surprised with the standard of both of these breweries that are involved here. So yeah, one other thing I would say about there's a little touch of complexity to this one. If you go into the very centre of your palate, where a little touch of those brown sugary flavours are coming out, and then you just come a little bit forward, straight along the front line of your tongue, there is a little edge of a kind of nutty flavour to this beer as well, which is very nice. I can't pick out exactly what type of nut it is, but it does have just a little bit of that kind of complexity there. And the further you go into the aftertaste with this one as well, there is just a little element of a woody note. If you just go out from that almost nutty flavour, just behind that sort of fruity bubble that I was talking about, the nutty flavours come out just behind that, but if you move out just towards the edge of your tongue, I think further into the aftertaste, there's a little woody edge to this one, and you can feel some of the earthy, roasty qualities of the coffee just pushing their way out into the aftertaste with this beer as well. It's a very, very smooth beer, this one, and the more and more that you get into this, I think the more oily it becomes too. But again, this is another very, very nice beer from both of these breweries, and I'm not surprised that this is, this is what they've produced. I really want to try some more of these coffee stouts from Modern Times, because I'm sure with all these different coffee beans that they've got, they can produce some really, really interesting stuff. In terms of the mouthfeel of this beer then, this beer, it's still a full-bodied beer, but like I said, compared to the other coffee stouts that I've had before, and imperial coffee stouts I guess at that, this particular beer is it is a little bit lighter in the mouthfeel. Like I was saying, this guy has Pilsner malt inside of it. It's also got a little bit of pale and Munich malt as well. So, these are the kind of malts that give you a little bit of that drinkability. The Munich malt is probably contributing to a bit of the smoothness that this beer has as well, in fairness. So, German traditional beer, the Helles, the Dunkels, and even the Doppelbocks and stuff like that as well. They've got this characteristic smoothness from these different malts, and you can really pick up some of that in this beer. That's probably what's helping bring out some of these lovely coffee flavours. But yeah, overall, the mouthfeel, I would say, it's quite a full-bodied beer, this one. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a good bit of an oily quality to it, but it's not as heavy and oily as some of the other ones that you're going to find in this particular sub-style. Nice little bit of hoppy bitterness to this beer. I would say this is somewhere around the 60 IBU mark, maybe a little bit more than that. I would say it's somewhere around the kind of 60, maybe 70 IBU mark at a push with this one. A little bit of bitterness coming both from the hoppy side of things. There's a nice earthiness to this particular beer, like I was saying. And it's also got a nice little bit, the roastiness, the bitterness coming from the coffee malts, and also the black malt, I guess, that they would use in this beer too. But it's absolutely lovely. You've got a good little bit of sweetness balancing out the malt base, and the roastiness of the coffee there as well. Nice little touch of hoppy bitterness, and also some really nice kind of juicy, fruity qualities there. The interesting thing with this one as well is that almost phenol kind of alcohol cakey quality that was coming out in the aroma doesn't particularly come out in the flavour in this one, but you can detect almost a little you can detect that this beer has just a little tiny touch of a kind of dark tropical fruit in this one from the Citra as well. As I say, I think this is the first beer I've had where they've added Citra to an imperial stout, or one of the darker styles of beer, right enough, but it works very, very well actually. So yeah, let's just leave it at that for this beer. As I say, I think this one would definitely go into my kind of top 4 or 5 beers that I've had involved in Amager Bryghus, and now that I know that Modern Times have a coffee roastery and things like that as well, I need to pay a little bit more attention to these, because the coffee stouts are a style that I've been getting very much into over the last little while. But a beautiful, beautiful beer, and it's, for me, this one isn't too far off the same quality that you'd get from the Herr Fredriksson, which is probably my personal favourite beer, or on the dark side of things, that I've had from Amager Bryghus. But let's leave it at that for this one. This one's just another very, very good imperial coffee stout. A little bit lighter in the mouthfeel compared to others, but it certainly kind of doesn't hold back in terms of the flavour at all. So have a go at this beer for yourself and just see what you think. But I think they've done an awesome job of this. So big thumbs up both to Amager Bryghus and Modern Times beer for this one. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Amager and from Modern Times, and I'm sure I'll return to both of these breweries at some point in the fairly near future. Make sure you check out my social media, all the links are in the description below, and make sure you try this beer and also some of the other ones from Amager Bryghus and from Modern Times beer as well. Until the next time, slàinte just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slàinte, skål, cheers.